Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the second episode of Extra Rounds Podcast. I'm Mike Dice.
Elias.
We really appreciate everybody tuning in and everybody who reviewed the podcast in iTunes and Google Play. We have an interesting show this week. We're going to talk to Joe Lauzon. We're going to talk to Louis Giordano.
Yeah, Louis Giordano.
I always think of the pizza, like in Chicago. For the Chicago people, get that. There's a lot of people who don't know what we're talking about, but that's what I always think of. And we're going to touch on UFC 201. We're going to talk about Nick Diaz, his suspension being lifted before getting into the interviews. So full show. Really excited to have it. And we're going to do a show at the end of the week with a couple of people that we're trying to get on the show today that we weren't able to. Lex McMahon from Titan and Stefan Struve, they work together on a charity that helps veterans.
Yeah, military veterans. A very exciting charity. And Stefan will probably have some stuff to say just about the heavyweight division in general. We're definitely going to ask him about Brock Lesnar because he's been talking about Brock Lesnar. So yeah, that'll be a fun extra bonus episode later this week.
If you follow his Twitter, like you already know, he talks about Brock Lesnar a lot. He maybe more so than anybody got joy out of watching everything unfold the way that it did. But first things first, let's get into it. There was an exciting show this weekend in Atlanta, UFC 201. For those of you who didn't check or follow the Sports Illustrated MMA page, we broke it down on a Facebook Live thing that we do after every pay-per-view event, or probably every event, maybe going forward. Yeah. So make sure to check that out. But let's touch on it again. First thing that stands out to me is Jake Ellenberger, 1-5, back against the wall. And that's kind of what everybody assumed. Back against the wall,
right?
Gets the big win.
Yeah.
And then Dana White, after the show, is interviewing, I think it's with Megan Levy, and he says I don't want to say begged. I don't think Dana White used that word, but he made it sound like Ellenberger was begging for one more shot to avoid the pink slip. And boy, did he make the most of it.
Yeah, he made good on that. He got his wish. He got another fight, but then he was matched up against a top 5 welterweight title challenger in Matt Brown, a phenomenal fighter who has been doing well, ups and downs like anyone, but been doing well against the best of the best. If you guys might remember, right before Robbie Lawler became champ, Matt Brown fought him, and they had a really close fight. And, Ellenberger got what he wanted. It seemed like maybe it would be a Pyrrhic victory, but he shocked everyone. And, I mean, I guess, we could be shocked in a sense, right? Ellenberger, with that power and with his ability to close that distance, is always a threat. But yeah, he had struggled so much lately that a win over someone that high in the rankings was just gigantic.
I don't think I expected him to win.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like I'm used to him losing lately. But what do you think made him win this time around? Was it that he was more aggressive in the cage, like he was really going after Brown, not trying to leave anything up to question?
It's hard to say, right? Like, I wasn't in his camp, and I know he's been touting before the fight. He was touting the work he'd been doing at King's MMA, and Jake was a guy that had a lot of his training had a real transient nature to it in recent years. He had a really good home, it seemed like, in Rain Training Center, Mark Munoz's gym, but then Mark closed that down when he retired, or shortly after he retired. And so Jake was bouncing around from gym to gym. I guess he would probably say that the work he's getting there, the instruction he's getting there, helped him, and I'm sure it did, right? They have great people there, and to have any type of consistency is always a good thing. But it's really impossible to tell. I think Jake Ellenberger, when he is 80, could get up off a rocking chair and be a threat, randomly at any given moment. He's just a heck of an athlete. He's got a lot of power and a lot of speed. And, I would love to have him on and ask him about that. But, I think it's one of those moments that could have happened at any given time with Jake Ellenberger. If he lets it go and he connects, you really can't. No one can really stand up to too many Jake Ellenberger shots to the chin, ever.
It seems like it could almost be a movie storyline. And I know that might be cliche to say because we're fans of the sport, so obviously everything to us is way more fascinating than maybe it is to the common person. But here's a guy who was a top contender for a long time. Yeah. He's faded. He's on this horrible losing streak. He's about to get cut, begs for one more shot, and makes good on it. You know, maybe Hollywood would put him on the UFC 200 card because it'd be like
It's true.
a more storybook finish.
Right.
But I could, it's the underdog story. Cinderella Man, Rocky, Rudy, like all that.
Totally. And we have to remember that most of these guys and girls, they're not the enormously rich athletes that we see in other sports a lot, like in big sports. So when we say a girl is fighting for their career, they really are. He doesn't have like some pension to fall back on. He doesn't have like probably, I'm guessing, not trying to insult Jake or anyone else. They don't. I don't probably have a few $1 million in the bank to fall back on. So this is a tough thing. You're facing the prospects of having to find a new profession, a new way to feed your family, and he's got a family when you're a young man but an old athlete. That's a stressful situation, and to be given an opportunity / like really tough bout and to make good on that is, I think anyone can. And when you put it in those terms, I think anyone can appreciate it, even if they're not huge fight fans. Fighting for your career, fighting to put food on the table. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Now for the UFC, what do you do with him? Do you give him one more contract and see if he can do it again, or one more fight and see if he can do it again?
Well, they
or
better.
You giving him like, okay, you won. Here's 3 more fights or 4, however long of a contract.
Yeah, I think they should. They'll probably give him another like normal 3 or 4 fight contract. I mean, those aren't binding on the UFCs, and so they could always cut them. Like, there's no real security in those, so why not give him something? Yeah, and in fact, they can lock him up at let's say he goes on a 3-fight or like a 2-fight winning streak after this, so he's got 3 fights total. If he's under contract, they could still, paying him whatever. They got a good bargain on him, So I would say the UFC should definitely give him a good contract, a low raise, and they should also look to utilize him in another. He did great, but at some point he'll have to retire. And he's a really smart guy. He's a good-looking guy, and he has a good mind for the sport. They should try to find other opportunities for him when he's done as well, hopefully.
So let's move on to the next fight. Rose Namajunas.
Oh man,
losing to Carolina.
Fight of the night.
Absolutely. I mean, another strawweight fight, another women's fight, and another night where it was the most entertaining and maybe evenly competitive fight. Like, the parity in women's MMA is maybe unparalleled in men's MMA.
I think so. I think especially in these divisions that we're seeing in the UFC right now, bantamweight and at strawweight. Yeah, that was amazing. We were hoping to see, possibly the new number 1 contender emerge from this. And we did. In Carolina getting that win, but we also, it was in a way that Rose really shouldn't have her status diminished at all, because I felt like, and we were talking about this during the fights we were watching here, the first 2 rounds were really tough to score. I could see them going, it being 1 apiece after 2 rounds. I could see someone scoring at 2-0 for either fighter. Carolina really closed and sealed the deal with that with a knockdown in the 3rd round. So Rose fought awesome, and the first 2 rounds was really a story of range, right? I felt both women kicked the other's butt, depending on the range. So Rose was incredibly successful at length with long, straight punches, and then Carolina beat her up in the clinch really badly with those knees and those elbows. So both women look great. We have a new contender, but the woman she beat, Rose, still should be considered a real top contender. It should still probably be like 1 or 2 fights away from another title shot. So yeah, it was a great fight, really important, and just elevated the division even more.
In professional wrestling, I'm a professional wrestling fan, sorry, but there's a way where finishes aren't clean, and what you do, obviously, because storyline and wrestler standings means a lot more in the world of professional wrestling than it does in MMA, because there's a storyline that they're trying to invest. So somebody like Brock Lesnar, that they're building up to be this invincible guy, they schedule, or the way that they have him get defeated is different than another person getting defeated. It's always with interference or something happens, so that way it doesn't hurt his stature. And that's kind of like what happened here with Rose. Like, she lost, but she didn't lose horribly, or she wasn't embarrassed. It was incredibly close. Like, she came out, I don't want to say unscathed, but she's not gonna drop out of the top 5 or anything like that.
Yeah.
But you said we were kind of hoping for a number 1 contender to emerge, and while a lot of people think that one did in Carolina, and Dana White alluded to the fact that he's strongly considering giving her the title shot, even though Joe Rogan went in the cage and said that she was getting it, that she basically, because she didn't win so decisively, she didn't really emerge, which I think is kind of a ridiculous argument, because if you look at the rankings, like who else is ahead of her? She just knocked off Rose.
Right.
You know, Carla Esparza, Joanna's fought before.
Unless they want to give another fight to Claudia, then yeah.
Yeah, and Claudia's up there, and she just fought. So, you know,
he just likes to keep his options open. You know, Dana likes to be the voice sometimes of the ignorant fan who wants to see someone's head blown off clean in the ring, and I think he doesn't do that because he's ignorant. I think he does that because he likes to. It's tough to make commitments in business ahead of time, right? You don't know what's going to happen. He probably likes to give himself the flexibility and the latitude to go any number of different directions depending on contract situations, depending on timing and injuries and all that type of stuff. So, you know, he may have some convincing of Joanna to do. Maybe she doesn't want that fight right now. Maybe she does. I don't know. But yeah, I think that's a ridiculous argument. You don't have someone like throw a last second touchdown pass off of a game, you know, off of what becomes a game-winning drive, or a last-second like three-pointer to win the game, and be like, well, you know, maybe it was a title-clinching game. Like, well, they didn't really, they just barely won that, so they're not the champs, or they don't.
Right.
What are you talking about? Like, you move on if you win.
Yeah, exactly.
Period.
No matter how decisive it was. But
yeah.
And the other thing is, I think when it comes to scheduling her, whether she gets the next title shot, is where do they do it? Like,
sure,
you would think. Like, first, when I started thinking about, when we were talking to you on UFC on Fox 20, and I was thinking about a matchup potentially with her and Carolina, it's like, man, to do that in Poland would be huge. And Dana White kind of alluded to that in his interview with Megan Levy. He's like, that's a fight that maybe I don't want to do in New York. I'd rather do in Poland.
I'll
and
build
I can
a market
understand
there.
why. I mean, it'd be a huge fight. So maybe he's like, Joanna also really wants to fight on the New York City card, which factors into this too.
Good
so
point.
It's like,
good point.
And there's a big Polish crowd there too to capitalize on as well. So it's like, maybe we want Joanna on the Madison Square Garden card, so we're gonna make Carolina fight someone else one more time and put her down the shot and hope that Joanna successfully defends with whoever we schedule her with to be on the Madison Square Garden card. So I could see like various possibilities of why he's not ready to commit to like one option or the other.
I just wonder who they'd give Joanna then.
Tisha Torres.
That's true. Sure.
She's up there. I mean,
she's great.
Esparza, I think, has climbed back up in the rankings. You know, depending if you're one of those people who gives that any credence or not.
Sure.
But
has she moved up without fighting? Really?
I think so.
That's hilarious.
Because I think I was looking at it and I was like, why is Carla?
I wouldn't doubt it.
But I could be completely wrong too.
I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. But no, I mean, yeah, healthy Carla Esparza is one of the best in the world.
I also look at other people's rankings, like other websites and stuff. So that might not be the UFC
I didn't realize
rankings.
there were other websites.
Yeah, there's only one. It's FanSided.com and Sports Illustrated. Don't forget Sports Illustrated. There's two websites. But anyways, so then afterwards, someone's asking. I think it was John Morgan from MMA Junkie. He asked Schaller about the potential matchup between Carolina and Joanna, and he kind of reiterated everything Dana White said earlier when he was talking to Levy. You know, it's a strong possibility, but we don't like to do this fight night, even though we as the media will always ask fight night, even though they tell us they'll never answer.
And sometimes they make fights in the back on fight night. They just don't want to have to do it.
But he, you know, stuck with the company line. Tuesday we meet, we talk. It's a strong possibility. And then Carolina like went, I don't want to say like full heel mode, but she just like grabbed the mic and Schaller looks over and he's like, I think Carolina wants to say something about this. And she's like, I think Joanna's scared. And I was just like,
love it.
Really? Like, Joanna, the second most tenured champion in the UFC at the moment?
She's got to do what she can. If she's thinking, hey, I just won the number one contenders fight and they're trying to maybe take away like this opportunity, I got to do something. Like you said, full heel mode. Got to pull it out. Got to get the fight that you've already earned. So good for her. I don't love non-deserving people being insulted. So I'm not saying, hey, I like that Joanna's being insulted. But good for
you have
the
to
fight.
goad potential opponents into your.
Yeah, apparently. I think this fight sells itself, but hey, she's trying to add a little extra to it.
Well, it's like Nate Diaz and the Conor McGregor fight, and I don't know if you saw all this, but like at UFC on Fox 17, whatever one was in Tampa right after 194 when he fought Michael Johnson, and of course he famously called out Conor McGregor in that expletive-laced rant that you didn't hear on Fox. You had to go to YouTube to hear the whole thing, but. There was like a clip of him in the back, and you can see him talking to his brother Nate, Nate talking to Nick, and if I'm remembering correctly, Nate's like apologizing because he's like, I cursed. Nobody heard anything. Oh, like, what was I thinking? I shouldn't have cussed because they bleeped everything out. And like Nick was reassuring him. It was like, no, they heard you. They know what you said. And
he knows what's up. He knows how to promote it.
It worked, you know?
They used it once the fight was made. They had that running.
And Dos Anjos pulls out, and it's like, who do you want? It's like, well, let's run down the list of people who've thrown their names in the hat. You know, there was 3 other people that I think 2 or 3 other people that called him out on that same card. And, you know, Nate did it in tremendous fashion, and it made a fight sellable. So I can see like what Carolina's doing, and I respect that.
Definitely.
Well,
can't blame her.
I don't know if I respect that, but you can't fault her for trying to position and angle herself and goad her in. And Joanna, when people were talking about it at UFC on Fox 20, was almost like, I don't want to say downplaying it, but I guess she's the champion, so she can downplay anything she wants to. But she was somebody was asking her about, you know, this battle and how it was once billed as proving that she wanted to be the best in Poland. And I think Dana White even alluded to that in his post UFC 201 interview with Megan Levy, that you know, Joanna encouraged them to sign Carolina because she wanted to prove she was the best in Poland. But then at UFC on Fox 20, and that might have been true when they signed her, but then at UFC on Fox 20, when we were talking to her, she was like, why do I need to prove I'm the best in Poland? This thing right here on my shoulder says I'm the best in the world. So
things changed a bit. And yeah, I mean, I could see where she's coming from. She just fought. It was a really close war. She probably wants a rest, or she probably wants to, maybe she wants to fight in New York, like you were saying, if she doesn't want to rest. And also, she fought and beat this woman. It was as an amateur, but you got to do a little something extra to get yourself motivated to fight someone that you've already beaten.
So let's get to Tyron Woodley, because we have guests who will be calling in shortly.
I want to come back to Nick as well. You mentioned some Nick Diaz hype stuff. We'll come back to that. It was an amazing main event. We got to touch on Nick Diaz because there's some Nick Diaz news this week as well.
He's on the agenda.
Yeah.
Tyron Woodley upset. Shocking or not shocking?
Yeah, I mean, yes, and that's not to be disrespectful to Tyron, but anytime a defending champion gets knocked out clean quickly, you got to be shocked, right? It's not that I didn't think T. Wood had the ability to do it. I definitely figured he had the ability to do it. But in the moment, yeah, it's shocking. You've seen Robbie take all sorts of damage and went out like that.
You know, you've seen Robbie just get his face smashed in, and he still keeps coming. So at one point, is anything going to stop him? And then he got caught, and beautifully at that. But yeah, I was shocked. Maybe more so, not that Woodley won, that how quickly and decisive he won.
Yeah, definitely. I thought he could win with that type of sequence. I didn't predict that it would happen in the first round.
Yeah.
It was just Lawler gave us no reason to believe that. But yeah, man, maybe it's just been too long since we had seen Woodley fight, and we forgot how quickly he moves out there.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I found really fascinating is after he wasted no time getting down to business.
Oh yeah.
He does the interview with Fox Sports. Stephen Thompson's on the desk, Wonder Boy, and he looks straight into the camera and asks if they're going to do business in November, which I'm assuming he meant the New York City card, which seems like everybody signed up for.
It's going to be a 40 fight card.
Yeah, they're going to have no problem finding a fighter who's willing to fight on that card. Everybody wants to fight on that card.
Yeah.
But Tyron, kind of going back to Carolina and the Joanna comment, he really clung to Thompson saying before the fight that he would rather fight Lawler, so he'd rather have Lawler win the fight, and told him no, and said, well, now you wanted to fight Robbie, now you can fight Robbie.
I like Wonder Boy a lot. He's a good dude. He's an amazing fighter. And that was still a hilarious moment for Woodley. Like, you know, I have no rooting interest there, but good on Woodley from his perspective to be like, all right, you were kind of overlooking me because you said you wanted Lawler, with the assumption being he's gonna be the champ. No, I'm good. I'll go with a bigger name that I think is an easier fight. Because make no mistake about it, someone like Thompson, someone like Damian Maia is a trickier matchup in my view. Over someone like Nick Diaz, who I think is an amazing fighter, but I don't think it's as tricky of a matchup at all for T. Wood.
As a hardcore fan, is it frustrating sometimes to see the big money fight as opposed to the more technical fight? Like, would you rather watch Thompson Woodley than Woodley Diaz?
Yeah, I would. I just think it would bother me too much that Nick, who I don't know if there's any, if many fighters who I enjoy watching more than Nick Diaz fight, and so I hold him in high regard. But fair is fair. Someone like Thompson or someone like Maia should be should both be having a title fight as their next fight, and one of them should wait if we're talking about what's fair. So yeah, that would bother me to see someone coming off of losses and suspensions getting it over guys that have these incredible win streaks. But if the UFC has already gone that route, and that's why someone like Tyron Woodley knows that he can like circumvent the normal kind of ranking type of stuff. So it's not on Woodley. Woodley deserves whatever he can get. So I don't blame him.
But Woodley's thinking money.
Yeah.
And the UFC's thinking money.
Yeah.
So Woodley says, I want to fight Diaz or St. Pierre, and the UFC's going, all right. We like that.
Yeah.
We like the sound of that.
I would imagine so. And hey, he's not calling out easy guys.
No.
If one of the people, I could understand the criticism for calling out Nick because of the matchup or his layoff and coming off of losses. But if you're calling out George St. Pierre, you can't, and you just fought and beat Robbie Lawler, and you finished Carlos Condit before, you can't say that you're not looking for the best fighters in the world. Like, that's a pretty stiff roster. You signed up to fight Johnny Hendricks. He just, he had some health issues with cutting weight. But yeah, Woodley's has nothing to prove to me or anyone else in terms of his willingness to fight top competition. But remember what he told us on the podcast when he was here last week. He said, this is going to be the last fight that I have to wait on other people, and will they sign so-and-so to fight? Because he had to wait. He was promised a shot, I believe, according to what he said, that then all of a sudden it was talk about kind of getting a rematch, or George St. Pierre coming back, or Nick fighting. He had to wait through all this. So he's not putting anyone in a position that he himself hasn't had to go through, and he is the champion now. So I don't have a problem with the fighters calling the shots a little bit more.
That's right. He told us, episode 1, Extra Rounds podcast, he said, when I get this belt, I'm calling the shots. And he started calling the shots immediately. True to his word, immediately started calling his shots. You talk about fighters visualizing how it's going to go. He visualized how it would go, and he visualized the next step. And that's why he was able to, in the moment, when he's being interviewed, respond the way that he was, because he's been thinking about it and visualizing it.
Very true.
He didn't just, between the time he had the belt wrapped around his waist to the time he walked backstage and they put the Fox cans on him, he was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to call Diaz here. You know what I mean?
He's an educated man with a plan. He's an entrepreneur. He knows what he wants to do. He's a business owner, and not just his own self, but he has his school. He's out there as an actor, which, by the way, I saw Straight Outta Compton for the last time last night. And this is what I'll say. I'll say Tyron Woodley's appearance is my favorite part of the movie. So
I was looking very hard for Tyron Woodley.
Did you not catch him?
No, I did. I did. But I guess I didn't know what kind of role he was going to have or what capacity. So as a fan, throughout the movie, which I thoroughly enjoyed, I was still in the back of my mind. I was like, did I miss him? Where is he? When's he going to come in? And then he came in, and the role was pretty. He plays this. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. Yeah. He plays a tough guy, enforcer kind of.
He's driving a car. I think afterwards. Yeah.
It was good. So
I don't know if I had heard correctly. I don't know if I heard this correctly or not, but that he had scenes cut or something, so he had maybe speaking more in it, but it was just cut because there's final edits that are done. So I wonder if there's scenes out there with him doing a little bit more in there. But it was cool to see him in there.
Yeah. So without further ado, let's get to the big topic of the day, August 1st, 2016.
Forget these championship belts and all that.
Yeah. Nick Diaz is back.
He's eligible to fight.
I mean, he's eligible to fight. He's back. I don't know if back's the right word to use because he doesn't have a fight or anything scheduled or on the horizon like Silva, I think, had his fight scheduled before his suspension was up.
Right.
But still, how exciting is that?
Very.
And think about the Diaz brothers have always been so popular and fan favorites amongst hardcore MMA fans, but to the mainstream crowd or the casual fan, maybe not so much. I don't have anything to support that, but you've seen Nate. He's been on Conan and Extra and all these other things that he was never on before since 196. And you wonder, the other Diaz brother, Nick, is going to get some of that rub as well. And it could be really interesting to see what happens now.
Absolutely. I mean, they never got the push from the UFC up until recently, but they always did good numbers. People would watch Nate on TV. Nick, when he finally got chances to headline cards, they did exceptionally well. And they sell the fights well. They fight incredibly well and enter in an entertaining fashion in a really unique way that no one else really does. Whether it's laying down
or yelling Stockton,
Stockton, middle fingers while you're finishing a triangle like Nate did, or laying down with Anderson Silva in front of you. All sorts of just stuff that has always gotten like the fans interested, but now they're finally getting the push. So yeah, and it'll be great to see Nick fight again if he wants to do it, and see who he's matched up with again. But it's also going to be great to see him in the corner, or at least being able to fully help his brother Nate. Those guys seem to be super close their entire careers. Nick got Nate into mixed martial arts. Like Nate has said, he dragged me to the gym with him. When it stopped going, had a day I didn't go, he yelled at me and dragged me back in there. They're so close. They're such a huge part of one another's training and preparation. And Nate didn't have all of that from Nick in his last fight when he fought Conor McGregor on short notice. Nick was under suspension, so he wasn't able to be in the back with Nate, warming him up, talking to him, going out there and cornering him as one of his coaches. And he was pretty upset about that. He talked a lot about that at the time. Nate didn't really mention how heavily it weighed on him, but I'm sure he's going to love having his brother there with him the entire time, emotionally, psychologically, and just in terms of tactics. It's going to be huge. So it's something that's big for Nick and whoever he fights, but it's also big for this fight we got coming up with Nate versus Conor too. Nick Diaz's shadow looms large in a number of different ways.
And he wasn't there for Nate Diaz's return in December.
Exactly.
He fought Michael Johnson either. He wasn't there either.
Those last two fights, yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. Now, anybody who's gone to those fights knows that Nick's there. He's just not there in the capacity that you would want someone that close to you to be there for you. You think about if your parents weren't able to come to anything that you were doing, that kind of, I guess, relationship. So it'll be really interesting to see. Now, potential fights. What do you do with Nick Diaz? If you're Dana White, Sean Shelby, Joe Silva, you're planning out things, what do you do with him? Who do you book him? When do you book him?
Depending on the schedule, if Nick wants to fight pretty soon, if he wants to fight before Robbie Lawler wants to fight again, then there's some other options. Otherwise, if when Robbie wants to and can fight again matches up with when Nick wants to and can fight again, I think that rematch from 2004, which was a great fight, should be done. They're both coming off of losses, but they're both elite guys. That would be an amazing fight. Other than that, I think you either go you throw Nick in with another huge name, or throw him in a huge name or a title fight, as strange as that may seem, right off the bat, or you just give him someone that's maybe in the top 20, top 30 that he can kind of showcase himself and let him carry like an FS1 card, let him carry a Fox card. Or maybe if pay-per-view is in need of a real name. I think Nick Diaz is on the level where he can carry a pay-per-view. So basically, I say you give Nick whatever he wants, because he's going to bring you a type of look and promotion that no one else really can, and he can do good business for them.
Diaz Lawler, too, would be
awesome, right?
Like, spectacular.
Yeah.
Take my money right now. Woodley is interesting. I mean, I don't want to say I wouldn't watch it or look forward to it, but I think it's interesting. But the Diaz Lawler, that's really compelling to me. I think that one really sticks out as something that could be really exciting and get fans really excited.
Totally.
And would do well. I think people would be fascinated to see that.
And it doesn't like step over anyone unfairly either, like a title shot would or something like that.
And then if he beats Robbie,
now we're talking. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, nobody could say don't give this dude the title shot.
Totally.
So. And if he loses, well, he lost to a guy who's just lost his second fight in 10 fights back with the UFC. And the 2 losses he has were title fights. So, I think it wouldn't hurt his standing to go back to like the pro wrestling stuff we were talking about, like with pros or whatever. I don't think it would hurt his standing at all.
I agree.
That would be really fascinating to see. I just am excited to have another Diaz in full force roaming around the UFC. Like, Absolutely. They're back with a vengeance.
Yeah, it's a more exciting place when those guys are roaming.
Yeah,
and you never know where they're going to show up. It's pretty awesome from a purist martial arts standpoint. They're really really great technicians, and then from an entertainment standpoint, they're ridiculously entertaining.
Oh, incredibly so. All the things you listed off before, the laying down on the mat, the backing up against the cage, the middle fingers, the yelling, it's just. One Diaz fighting every few months isn't enough.
Not at all. I'm hoping there's like a cousin somewhere that they've been training and hasn't fought in secret for 10 years.
We need to find that guy. Somebody, maybe he's like considerably younger. Like maybe he's 18 and we don't know about him. He's just been waiting in the wings. And
Let's do it.
That would
Billy Diaz, Efrain Diaz, if you're out there, wherever you are, let's go. We'll make you famous, man.
Well, we're getting ready to bring on our first guest, Joe Lauzon. Let's see if we can get him on the phone. So, Joe, you're fighting again really quickly. Do you believe in summer vacation?
I got time to make up for it. I fought in December. I broke my hand. So I had to take 6 months off, so I could either wait until December, November, December, try to get on maybe that Madison Square Garden card or a New Year's card or something like that, or I could just, roll the dice, try to get in there fast, and then maybe try to get in there again for that. I mean, I came out super healthy. Camp was good. Like, I banged up my wrist a little bit, but wasn't a big deal. But I mean, I feel great. I feel good. I had a much shorter camp for the Diego fight, so now, I mean, for the Jim Miller fight, I get pretty much the same amount of time for sparring and stuff, so it's really not that bad.
Is the short camp a benefit, like when you're turning around and fighting on short notice?
I used to think it wasn't enough time, but then I would always be like, I'd be like 4 weeks out, like, oh, I wish I could fight tomorrow. Like, I think that there's less room for, mistakes and injuries this way, because obviously if I get hurt, I don't even get a chance to get into shape, whereas if I had more time, I could deal with injuries a little bit better. But as long as I don't get, as long as we don't get too banged up and nothing too serious, which usually doesn't happen in the beginning. It usually happens towards the end, like once I'm getting closer. So I think this will be much better for me.
Since you mentioned it and we talked about it earlier, the Madison Square Garden is really popular amongst fighters. It seems like everybody wants to fight on the card. You living close or being from the northeastern part of the country, is the Madison Square Garden card something you really, really want to be a part of?
It'd be cool. I mean, there's been so much talk about it for so many years about, the UFC going to Madison Square Garden. It's not far. I mean, it's driving distance from where I live. I get tons of people that could go for that. That would be really cool to be part of. I was just part of UFC 200, which I think was like the biggest show ever. And now to be part of that would be awesome. That'd be a great year.
As you mentioned, you fought on UFC 200. The Madison Square Garden card, a lot of people think will be bigger than UFC 200. That's two huge events that could potentially be the biggest in company history. And you might be the only one to be on both of them.
Yep. So I mean, we'll see how it all shakes out. I'm not, now that I know I'm fighting Jim Miller, in Vancouver, I'm not worried about that at all. Like, that's like the least of my worries, it's the least of my issues. But, after 200, I was definitely thinking about it. But we'll see. If this fight goes well like the last fight did, maybe, we'll try and pull a cowboy. We'll just keep it going. Fight every 2 months.
Well, going back to UFC 200, huge event, tons of fans in town, the International Fight Week, people from all over the world, 2 cards leading into it, new arena, stacked card, Brock Lesnar. There's a lot of craziness. What was it like as a fighter to be a part of a huge event like that and all the craziness?
It was really cool. It was kind of nice because I was definitely the little fish in the big pond for that show. I think on most cards, I think I would be much higher up the card. But I was like third fight of the night. I was all excited. Like before the fight happened. I don't really fanboy out about people, but I always try to I always like seeing what other people are doing. Like I really enjoy seeing how other people warm up and get loose and how they get ready for fights and watch them hit mitts and all that other stuff. And like at Meteor, you really don't get to see that. It's only in the back room on fight night or in the gym on a normal basis that you get to see that. And for me, it's always just kind of cool to kind of see how other people are getting ready. And it was cool to kind of fanboy out just a little bit. Once my fight was over, just like watching people warm up and seeing what they like to do. And because I mean that's when it matters. That's when they got to be super sharp. They got to be dialed in. It's cool to watch that.
So it's funny that you say fanboy. You're backstage, you're walking around, seeing people warm up. What stood out from you, or what stood out to you from surveying?
Gomi really stood out to me because, so I fought Gomi last summer, and we were, like, terrified of Gomi. He's got crazy power in his hands, like, he knocks people out. And he just did, I don't know if it's a Japanese thing, but he just did, like, the strangest warm-up. I mean, it worked for him, but he just did, like, a lot of, like, stretching, and, like, he was doing, crouched down and, like, on both heels and, like, kicking his legs out and catching himself. He's just doing a lot of, like, weird stuff that I'm just not used to seeing. That was the main stuff that stood out to me. I didn't. He was really the only person I got to watch because he was the one that fought before me, and then after that I wasn't really in the locker room too much. But everyone does stuff different. I remember I fought at I think it was UFC 136. When I fought Melvin Gillard, and Chael Sonnen was in the back room, and I'm watching him do like this crazy spin kick over and over and over, and then working on an arm triangle choke. Those are the only two things he did the entire back room. Just like did those two moves like 8,000 times. And then I went there, and then he freaking worked the spinning back kick, and then he hit the arm triangle choke and finished. It was just, it's just weird watching people warm up because like sometimes you watch him, and you're like, there is not a chance he's gonna do that, and then they do it, or it works. It's fun.
So Joe, did you get a chance after your fight, after you fought and beat Diego Sanchez at UFC 200? Did you get to go and watch the rest of the card in the arena with your family?
Yep. So it was kind of nice. Like sometimes UFC gives us like really good seats. It's like right down close to the front. Sometimes they give us seats that are kind of far away, and like I never really understood why they were like really good sometimes and why they were really bad sometimes. And I figured out for this card that they were right by the elevator. There was an elevator right there, so they weren't the best seats. They were good seats, but they weren't the best seats. But it was awesome because I got to go right at the elevator, and literally the seats were right there, like back row. Like it was kind of nice. I got to watch pretty much the whole entire main card, which was cool. A couple people there I was taking pictures with, but they weren't blowing up my spot too much. Like I had a lot of people coming up and taking pictures. But no one was screaming from across the venue. Which I've had that happen in the past too. And it's good because you get to see a lot of people, but it marks the end of doing anything and having any time until the entire arena clears up.
I can imagine. I remember that actually reminds me, Joe, of the time you told me. I think it was a UFC event in Jersey. You weren't fighting on it. But a few years ago, you took your now wife, Katie, to it to go watch. And it sounded like you guys weren't seated by the elevator in this one because Katie ended up being, I'll let you tell the story if you remember which one I'm talking about, but she ended up being really shocked by discovering that UFC fighters can have some pretty ardent fans. Yeah,
like she'd been to a couple of my fights before, but it was always like when she goes to the fights, like at night that I'm fighting, so I'm kind of away from all the people. Like it's serious. It's all serious. It's all business. It's getting escorted. It's not really being around fans. But we went to a UFC in New Jersey, and we got there like after a couple fights started. So we got to our seats, no problem. Didn't really get stopped that bad. It was okay. And I put my hoodie on, put my hood up, and freaking just went. And but then after the main event got over, trying to get out of there, it was like I got swarmed by people for like 45 minutes. Like I could not move. Like she's trying to get to me, and just like a swarm of people, and then. Luckily, a couple of my friends showed up, and they kind of got her and kind of dragged me through the crowd, kicking and screaming. But she had like a mental breakdown afterwards because she had no idea that it was like that. She's like, "You're gonna replace me? I'm so easily replaced. This is not what I expected." Like she was so upset. I'm like, I've never had someone so upset for having people like me.
But it all worked out. Basically, all of New Jersey was like your wingman for that night.
Yeah, it worked out. It was pretty good.
So that was in July, UFC 200, your last fight. Not that awesome story, but your last fight was in July. Now you're fighting August 27th in Vancouver against Jim Miller, who you fought about 4 years ago. How soon after UFC 200, Joe, did they offer you the rematch with Jim Miller?
So Pokemon Go came out the week I was up in Vegas. So I was playing Pokemon Go, like we were like driving around Vegas, doing whatever, and like my coaches, I felt like they were getting a little bit concerned because I'm like I have like this big fight, a big deal, UFC $200, all this stuff, and I have my nose in my computer, not my computer, my phone the entire time, and they're all like, "Hey, you're gonna fight, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and I'm freaking catching Pokemon and all this other stuff. So after the fight, I was pumped because everything went great. I don't have to worry about it. So I'm out playing Pokemon Go. I'm driving around. I'm parking. Like I'm going out to like parks late at night, freaking sitting there catching Pokemon. And so it was like so I fought on Saturday. So Friday night, I'm out catching Pokemon, and Joe Silva texts me, and he's like, "How healthy are you right now?" And I'm like, "I'm pretty good." I'm like, I haven't trained yet. I'm planning to train like Tuesday or so, but I mean, I feel good. I wasn't banged up from camp. I wasn't banged up from the fight. Like I feel good. He's like, "Okay." He's like, "Well." He's like, I'm kind of desperate. I could definitely use you on the Vancouver card. And I'm like, you're really cutting into my Pokemon Go time. and Joe Silva starts telling me, like, well, I hear there's a lot of rare Pokemon in Vancouver. So he sold me. So I trained the next morning. and I felt good. I mean, I felt great. Honestly, I felt really good. And I told him, let's, who are you thinking? He said Jim Miller. I said, let's do it.
That's awesome. So of course, this fight on the 27th, August 27th in Vancouver, UFC on Fox card, I believe, with Jim Miller is a rematch. You guys fought in December 2012, Joe, and that was an amazing back and forth battle. It was basically an instant classic. Now, early on, Jim basically jumped all over you, Joe. Like, he connected with a bunch of big elbows, cut you open, had you hurt. You recovered and stormed back in the last 2 rounds. I actually scored it for you. I thought you stole it. He ended up getting the decision in a great fight. But I'm curious about the first round, or situations like the first round, Joe. When an opponent is able to come out early and get the jump on you, so to speak, looking back, is that the type of situation that you feel is just kind of a coin toss? Say sometimes it just happens that way, you can't really control it. You're a person that starts really, really fast, as we saw in your last fight. Or is it something that you can look back and attribute to certain factors or mistakes that you made?
I think a lot of times if someone comes out really aggressive and early, I think that the first, few exchanges really set the tone for the rest of the fight. I felt like, I fought Jim Miller. I think I was supposed to fight Terry Adam. I forget who I was supposed to. I was supposed to fight Terry Adam or Gray Maynard, but someone. And then he, whoever it was, got hurt and pulled out something. So I fought Jim Miller. So I've been working on all righty stuff. And fighting a righty versus fighting a lefty is very different. Because you have to kind of reprogram all of your natural footwork, all of your like the way you deal with punches, the way you throw your punches, the combinations you throw. Like, there's a lot that changes fighting a lefty versus a righty. So I was going for a righty, and it got switched to Jim Miller, who's a lefty. So for like 3 weeks, it was basically a crash course in lefty. And it really took me a little bit of time to kind of get used to it, because you got to get used to the distance, you got to get used to the lefty, you got to get used to their style, all these different things. So it took me a little bit to kind of get used to it, and I think that he was kind of playing on that, because he took the fight on short notice. So I think that if he came out very aggressive in the beginning, then, if he gets me out of there early, then, the shorter camp doesn't really affect him as much. If he doesn't get me out of there, then that it kind of plays out the way it did, which is, he had a really good first round. I rewatched it last week, a couple days ago, and I think that he won the fight. I think he got the first for sure. I think the second was close, but he out-controlled me, and I thought I definitely won the third. Which is kind of what I would expect for someone coming off of a short camp and really pressing it. But I definitely think that being aggressive early is a big advantage, as long as, you get the job done. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you be aggressive early and, you get really, really tired, and then the later rounds are not so kind to you.
Now, Joe, you got the job done early in your last fight at 200 against Diego Sanchez. You connected with a right pretty early. You dropped him several times. The ref kept letting it go on, though, for a while. Kept dropping him over and over, hurting him over and over. You were putting so much into these shots. We were both there and saw it. At one point, you actually fell yourself and got right back up after a shot you threw. Just curious, were you obviously you were able to finish it, but looking back now, would you have been worried that perhaps you would have been a little bit spent if Diego had managed to make it into the second round, given how much gusto you were giving it?
No, I mean, we were ready. If you I can probably say it to you, I have so much sparring footage. We film every sparring session. And every single sparring session was a drag-out brawl. You know what I mean? Like, we were working a lot of takedowns, and we did a lot more, strategic sparring. But for, hard work sparring was just, nonstop. Like a scene out of Dragon Ball Z or something with just, counter and punches and punch. You know what I mean? So I was ready to do that for 15 minutes, which is also why I feel so good about taking the Miller fight, because I was in really, really good shape for this last one. So I think it's easy to kind of keep the ball rolling and keep it going. If I was not in the best shape, or if I had an injury or something like that, I probably wouldn't have hopped in such an early fight.
Now, you talked a little bit about the physical advantages that could be there when you have a short training camp. You don't have much time to prepare. Are there also mental or psychological ones, specifically meaning there's a lot of pressure that goes on inside the head when you have let's say a nice extended camp where you're able to give yourself all you need to peak, but also day in and day out for week after week, sometimes month after month, you go to bed thinking about and wake up thinking about this person who's training to hurt you. Is it do you expect it to be a psychological advantage, maybe not for yourself, but that both of you guys have going into this one with not a large, a long camp? Because Miller obviously fought at 200 as well, so he's going to have exact same period of time as you.
It's kind of weird because, so before Joe Silva called me, I was hoping he would call me about, filling in last minute on a short notice or something like that. Because I was in great shape. I was healthy. I planned on, I wouldn't have been out of the gym more than a week. I would have been right back in there. I was in the gym. I just wasn't doing hard stuff. I was like hoping he would call me. And then I see his name on my phone, and like I got like the worst drop in my stomach. Like I'm like, ugh. Like, why did he call me right now? And I knew why he was calling me. And and then he offers me Jim Miller. And again, I have this grumble in my stomach, and I'm like, oh, do I want to do this? I just got out of camp. It was kind of nice. Like, I just won my last fight. It's always nice after a win. It sucks after a loss. I kind of just want to enjoy this a little bit. You know what? Let's just do it. I have no reason not to do it. I have every reason to do it. Let's do it. And once I took it, then I got excited. But I was definitely. I was definitely feeling like almost like like a little bit of remorse or something. Like, oh, do I really want to do this? Like, maybe I should just enjoy this for a little bit. Like, it's summertime. I can go to the beach. I can hang out. Like, I can do all this other stuff. It's like, this should be like the carefree time. My wife Katie's always like, you're so happy after a win. You're a different person. After a loss, you're kind of miserable. But after a win, you're so happy. She's like, I like this. And then, 6 days later, I tell her, hey, we're going to do another fight in 3 weeks.
And more importantly, this is going to eat into your Pokemon Go time. Can you? So let's get back to that. Can you credit Pokemon Go for keeping you shape in between fights?
And it's going to sound bad, but I can honestly say that it was like the week after my fight. But I walked around the park for like 2 hours so I dropped my son off at he had a toddler play group on Thursday mornings. So I dropped him off at 9 o'clock, and I went and just walked laps around this park for 2 hours. And I got back in the car, and my back was so sore from walking around. I'm good at doing MMA rounds, I'm good at doing wrestling, I'm doing other stuff, but just walking around really bothered my back. So Pokemon Go is definitely going to take credit for me getting exercise while I was injured.
And we've talked about this, but is it difficult to go through the rigors of a training camp and then turn around and do it right again without giving your body the proper rest or whatever?
Well, this is the first time I've ever done it like this. So I don't know. I'll tell you in a month. But I don't think it's that tough. I mean, I really enjoy training. I'm in regardless. Some guys get out of the gym for months. I'm always in the gym. 4 or 5 days a week minimum, regardless. Whether I fight or not, I'm always working on getting better. I'm always, you know what I mean. Not every workout has to make you, puke and hate life and just be miserable. But I'm always in the gym. My last camp, I was in really good cardio shape, but we almost did less work than more. I feel like sometimes in the past, I've trained too hard that I wasn't I wasn't peaking 100%. Whereas I was in good shape, but I was ready to grind. Whereas this fight, I felt like I was in really good shape. I felt that I was really sharp. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, I really enjoyed having a little bit less sparring for my last fight. But we're gonna do the same thing this. We'll see how it works out. If it works out great, I'll never go back. If it works out bad, maybe we'll think about it a little more.
And Joe, you mentioned never really being out of the gym. And for those that don't know, you own and run your own gym, Lauzon MMA in Massachusetts, and outside of Boston. In fact, you guys are opening up a second gym. I know that you mentioned that in July. Now you're very hands-on. I've actually gotten a chance to train there with you guys quite a bit. In fact, I was there in the last week of one of your training camps last year, and you were still teaching classes, which is really cool because there might be other gyms out there that might have a fighter name license to them. But if you go to Lauzon MMA, you're going to get taught more than likely by Joe Lauzon in addition to a really good staff. So you're involved in this community that you've helped create. It's a very familiar atmosphere. What is the vibe there right now? You're coming off this huge, amazing win, and now you're heading into another fight. It's a busy summer at Lauzon MMA.
Yeah, I mean, it's super high. Everyone's excited. Everyone's pumped about it. It's cool too because I always say whenever I do interviews, I always say I never say I did this or I always say we did this or you know what I mean. And that's because that's the way I think about it. It's 100% a team effort. It's me, it's my coaches, my training partners. I have guys that will never fight in the UFC, but they train with me. They're sparring partners. They do this, they do that. You know what I mean? they're great. And when I win, I know that they take pride in the fact that they helped out. They were a part of that. So it's always a good vibe. It's like off a loss, it's like it's still a good vibe. Because everyone's so proud of me. Like they see me training hard. Like they still see you there. But obviously going out there and and having such a dominant performance. Everyone's super excited. But it's good.
So you've never done this type of quick turnaround like you were just telling Mike between fights. This is going to be the fastest one you've ever had. But what are you expecting, Joe, from a second weight cut in as many months? You haven't done it before, but is it going to be really tough? Like, I don't know how much you've gotten to pig out after the last fight, if you're up to light heavyweight already or not. I know you can eat well, or do you not think it's going to be that big of a deal?
I didn't even get a chance to gain any weight. So I think the heaviest I've been in my entire life is like 176, right? And I was lifting like crazy. I wasn't doing anything but really lifting and grappling a little bit and like hitting mids, like no sparring, nothing like super intense, just lifting all the time. Just because I was trying to gain a little bit of muscle, and and I pretty much eat what I want all the time. Like, so I don't like after I fight, I'm not like, I'm not fiending for food like some people are. Like I'm looking for stuff a little bit, but not that bad. Like I don't go out. Like I know some guys that after they fight they gain 15 pounds in a week. But that's not me. I was still like 168, 169, which I mean that's actually lighter than I landed in Vegas for my last fight. So everything's good weight wise. It's gonna suck a little bit getting in the sauna. But honestly, I feel like I had my easiest cut ever. I think I hopped in the sauna for 2 15-minute sections and 2 10-minute sections last time. So it was a really easy cut last time, So it's gonna suck a little bit. Like when I get in the sauna for the first time, I'm like, here we go again. But overall, I don't anticipate it being too bad.
Now, how have you changed, do you feel, Joe, since the last fight, the last time you fought Jim Miller? You talked a little bit about how your preparation is going to be different and how that could benefit you. But just you as a fighter, what's different this time around?
I definitely think I'm better than I was then. I think I definitely have more time to prepare for the fight just because now I'm more used to all the lefty stuff. I've been fighting lefties for the last year, so that's kind of nice. But, I mean, obviously everything just kind of sinks in. I'm that guy that is, like I said, I'm always in the gym. I'm always getting better. I'm always focused on, improving. So, I mean, now I've had, like 4 years of just getting better at all these different things and areas. And, and I'm sure Jim, has gotten better too, but I feel like I think that I've gotten better than he has in the meantime. I think that, version of me today beats the version of Miller today, for sure. I think it was really, really close back then. It was, razor close, but I think I'm just, I think I'm just a different person. I can see how much better I am at all these different things, and I know he is too. But I think I'm going to have the advantage. I think I'm going to turn the tide.
Now, correct us if we're wrong, Joe, but I believe you've got another Jimmy Fund walk coming up soon.
Yep. So we're doing that. It's September 25th.
Cool. And so talk a little bit about how you and your family got involved with them, the Jimmy Fund, this charitable walk, and why you choose to continue to support this foundation year after year.
So we're raising money for the Jimmy Fund, the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And basically, so my son now is 2.5 years old, but when he was born, he was diagnosed with cancer when he was like 5 or 6 days old. So he had neuroblastoma, which is like the most common pediatric cancer. It's like basically 500 cases a year of newborns. And so Joey was born, had cancer, started chemo at like 6 or 7 days old. Really, really scary time. Didn't think I'd ever fight again. Thought I was going to be 100%, just focused on Joey and everything like that. But kid's a champ. He did 3 rounds of chemo. Didn't complain. He just, obviously not very happy about it, but he just did it. And, completely, cancer-free now. He's been cancer-free for a little over 2 years now. So he's doing awesome, So the Jimmy Fund was just amazing for us. They just did such a good job. Like Joey, is as much fun as you can have going and getting, stuck with needles and giving blood and all that kind of stuff. Like, he was always in a good mood there. Everyone was super nice. So we try to raise money to help them out. They raise a ton of money. In the last 2 years, we've raised around $100,000. So, the UFC's donated money as a company. Dana White donated money personally. Lorenzo Fertitta donated money personally. This year, Reebok is basically, we have a team of, right now we have around 40 walkers, but Reebok has donated shirts, shorts, and shoes for everyone on our team. So, have all, custom, Team Joey T-shirts and clothes. So it's really, really cool. If you want to donate, you can go to teamjoey.joelauzon.com. And there's a link right there. You can donate to the team or donate to me or however you want to do it. But all the money goes directly to the Jimmy Fund. It's all for cancer research and help out little kids. If you don't like kids getting cancer, you should go and donate.
That's awesome. We're so happy that Joey is doing well, and it's great to see you guys continue to raise money for other children like him. And obviously, we can't wait for this fight, August 27th, UFC on Fox, a rematch against Jim Miller.
I'm gonna try to keep my blood inside my body this time. Maybe we'll even it up. Maybe he can spill some of his blood, but I'm gonna try to keep my blood inside.
Yeah, definitely try to make him bleed his own blood, Joe. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Joe.
No problem. Anytime. Always glad to be on.
Wow. We have a brief history, but best interview ever. What didn't he talk about? Pokemon Go, crazy behind-the-scenes stories with people like Chael Sonnen.
Dragon Ball Z. Cancer
I don't even know what that is. Yeah, I think it was really cool that he mentioned that the UFC donated.
Yeah.
And not only that the UFC donated, that Fertitta and Dana White
as individuals. Yeah.
donated as individuals.
That's awesome.
And that Reebok got behind it and donated equipment.
The Reebok headquarters, like global headquarters, is like 15 minutes from Joe's gym. Their whole huge campus. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I actually did a tour before, I forget which fight. Maybe it's fight against Gomi the week prior. We went. I went with a couple of his coaches. I was there following him for some features, and he visited. And he's like, that's when he got to try on like his fight kit, his gear that he was gonna have. But yeah, it's really, really close. So it's really cool to see Reebok get involved with the cause and get involved with a local fighter who is probably one of the best fighters to come out of Massachusetts ever, and doing it for a good cause. So yeah, it's pretty dope because they always do those really cool T-shirts. Joe always makes good T-shirts for himself, his team, but to see Reebok get involved and do that, that's pretty dope. Yeah,
I mean that's incredibly special. And there's so much the training, the short camp, the Pokemon Go stuff. I haven't even downloaded that on my phone yet, so I feel like I'm too busy for this. And here's a guy who just fought.
That's right.
And he's got kids and a wife, and he runs a gym, and he's still playing Pokemon Go, and he's got another fight like already lined up on the books. I have no excuses anymore.
No excuses for not playing Pokemon Go, except for being an adult.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Joe. I'm still gonna rag on you for that, man. That's hilarious.
So what do you think of the Jim Miller fight?
I think it's a phenomenal fight. It's cool because they run back and do rematches of title fights a lot of times, but we don't often see just plain amazing fights that were between great fighters that were on an undercard get done again. And it just worked out really well this time. Joe Lauzon fought and won quickly at UFC 200. Jim Miller fought and won quickly at UFC 200. So they're both healthy. This opportunity came about, and they were both game. If you haven't seen their first fight, find it. Go on UFC Fight Pass or whatever. Get it done. It's an amazing fight. And once you see that fight, and then you think about, okay, these guys are both healthy. They're both motivated, and they've 4 years improved, hopefully. You're just going to get absolutely stoked for this card. It's gonna end the summer on a real high note. Yeah,
I can't wait. And it's interesting that he said that Joe Silva called and needed a favor, because there was a lot of question about what was going to be the main event for a while. It seemed like there wasn't one, and then they moved the Condit fight to that card, and then you call in the favor with Joe and Jim Miller to get this fight booked. So
it's a pretty great card now all of a sudden.
But quietly out of nowhere, it's like it went from who's headlining this? Like
Kenna's getting
we're selling tickets, but we don't know what we're buying to see. And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, I lucked into this. It's like one of those situations where if you bought a ticket before they announce, or I don't even know exactly the timeline, but
but sometimes fans get burned, and sometimes they get rewarded for just having faith in the UFC product. This is a time where they're getting rewarded. I don't know what they were going to do before. If Dana White was just going to do a monologue in the center of the octagon for
Joe Rogan. They could try Joe Rogan.
That'd be worth it. Joe's a great stand-up. I would watch that. Yeah.
Have you ever seen his stand-up?
Oh yeah, I've seen it in person actually.
Yeah,
he's solid.
I went once to see it.
Cool. Yeah, no, I like him. He's great.
Yeah, he puts on an interesting show. I've always I've seen him do stand-up video through video clips here and there, but I finally got to see him in person last year, and he's just as good in person. He lived up. So we also have joining us Louis Giordano. He Lutrition, as we know him. He manages many fighters' wage, Johnny Hendricks, amongst them who fought at UFC 200, and we want to talk to him about that. But This is the first time that I've gotten to talk to him, so I wanted to get to know you, Lou, a little bit better. So what got you into healthy eating and healthy living and weight management? What drew you to this field?
Well, it's kind of a double question in the sense. What got me into the health and fitness industry over 16 years ago was I come from a very heavy family, and I was tall and thin, so it didn't make sense to me as a child. And as I got older, I decided to try to get educated and learn so that maybe I can help them. And what I found was that there's a lot of people in this world who actually suffer the same way that they do. So it really just started this quest about 16 years ago to try to, help as many people as I can. As far as the weight management with fighters, it was about a little over a year ago when I had met my first fighter, Eddie Chuck Gordon, season 19 winner of The Ultimate Fighter. And my brother was sponsoring him at the time, and he was telling me about how horrible his weight cuts were. And I know as a wrestler, there's a better way to do it. And I was just talking to him, and he asked me if I would help him for his next fight. And then it just kind of, steamrolled from there at that point.
So you talked about first being drawn to it when you were a kid. Kids normally are growing up eating whatever they want. They're not really thinking about what they're eating. So what was it like being the one kid who cared about healthy eating and exercising in your body when everybody else is stuffed in their face with, Hostess cupcakes like I was? What was that like when kids are eating whatever they want?
It was tough, actually, because, like I said earlier, when I was younger, I was tall and thin. And then when my family moved, I went from being very active to not being active at all, and I started to kind of gain a little bit of weight. I'll use the word chubby for myself. I got real chubby, and it freaked me out. And at that time, I believe Slim Fast just first came out. It was like the newest thing. And, of course, my family had tons and tons of cases of it. And in 7th grade, I started sneaking Slim Fast for lunch. I would have a shake for breakfast and Slim Fast for lunch, and all the kids at my table would look at me weird. They're all eating whatever they want, and here I am just drinking a 6 or 8 ounce shake. So it was definitely challenging, but I knew the bigger picture was to just ultimately try to be as healthy as I can be and kind of not listen to what other people were saying.
So when you begin working with fighters, you talked about Eddie Chuck Gordon and you're jumping into it. Was it something that you were able to jump right into? Did it take some time to learn what works for MMA fighters? Did it take some experimenting? What was that like?
You know what? It's a little bit of both. I've been a certified weight management specialist for a number of years now. And like I said, I've been in the health and fitness industry for 16 years. So I've been managing people's weight for, close to 16 years. And I've worked with professional bodybuilders where they have to, diet down and be a specific weight to get on stage and compete, in that sense. And I've helped, wrestlers, nothing on obviously as big of a scale as the UFC, but I understand the body, I understand how it works, and I understand how to manipulate it in a good way. And when I first sat down with Eddie a little over a year ago, I just tweaked what he was eating, and his weight just came off. There really was no hardcore protocol, and it kind of, set a light bulb off because I kind of thought that the guys, at least in the UFC, the sport has evolved so much that weight cutting would evolve too, and it's the one thing still to this day that is yet to evolve. They're still cutting weight the way that we did it, back in the 90s for wrestling, which was kind of scary to me.
As someone who has firsthand experience working with fighters trying to cut weight, you have a unique perspective. What is your opinion on the weight class structure in MMA as it stands right now?
I think that I'd like to see more weight classes for two reasons. I'd like to make it a little bit easier on the guys and girls to make weight. And also there are so many talented fighters out there that having more weight classes would just mean more opportunities for guys and girls to get more fights, which as a fan, as I am, it would be exciting to see that as well. So I think it's a win-win to just add more weight classes.
So I think from flyweight to light heavyweight that a weight class every 10 pounds makes a lot of sense. I don't like the 15-pound jumps. Do you think a weight class every 10 pounds is the right way to go?
I like that. I think that would be great. Absolutely.
So, Lou, when you talk about MMA fighters still cutting weight like you guys did as young wrestlers in the 90s, when you talk about it not evolving with the rest of the sport, are you referring specifically to athletes resorting to, like walking around very heavy and resorting to extreme dehydration shortly before their fights, to cut pounds instead of just simply staying closer to their fight weights all year round?
Absolutely. That's you hit the nail right on the head. You know, when I say that the weight cutting has not evolved, people are still doing the same things that we did. Wearing rubber suits without drinking anything, barely eating anything, going days without eating, you know, sucking on Jolly Ranchers and spitting in a cup, you know, not drinking water for 2 days. Just the most dramatic things that you could possibly do and torture your body just to make weight. And they still do that on a professional level. And there are professionals who are in the industry trying to help people make weight that are doing that to their fighters as well. So it's just really, really confusing to me.
Now, you've worked with a lot of UFC fighters in a short period of time. Talked about Truck Gordon, who not just fought better, lost weight, was able to go to a whole nother weight class, but is really touted just the lifestyle change and feeling healthier. You worked with John Jones. Obviously, you worked with Johnny Hendricks, just working with Andre Arlovsky. Has it been a challenge, now that you've gotten to work with a lot of high-level fighters, has it been a challenge to change fighters' mindsets from the idea of, I've got to get as big as I can, to, hey, let me stay lighter, leaner, healthier year-round? Like, have you encountered a lot of nervousness on their part to the idea of walking around smaller year-round, whether it's because of some psychological block, they're worried about being a smaller person, or because of maybe bad habits with eating?
Again, man, and that's why I love, speaking with you, because you hit the nail on the head every time, and that's what it is. It's always a struggle when I sit down with a new person, and it's been that way my whole career, whether they're an athlete or not. It's trying to get people to understand and break all these myths out there and get them to understand that, well, with the fighters, you don't have an advantage walking around bigger. You don't have an advantage. You're not going to lose strength if you manage your weight properly. And all these things. And every fighter, because they've been doing it for so long, their way, you got to remember, even if it is the worst weight cut of their life, but they made weight in their minds, they still did it. It worked, And so I have to kind of break all those molds. And some guys listen a lot better than others. And it is a process, but it's one that I won't stop trying to preach and educate. But it definitely is a struggle. There's no doubt about it.
Now, Johnny Hendricks recently fought at UFC 200. Before the fight, he missed weight. Now, you've worked with Johnny Lou for a couple fights, but he's had issues making weight for years now. From your perspective, because this is not something that's really been talked about since then openly, what happened with Johnny missing weight at UFC 200?
Well, there are a few things that kind of happen, And I've been a guy in my career that have always spoke the truth and stood behind that, First and foremost, I do take responsibility for us missing weight. We should have never been that close. We should have never, missed it by 0.25, even how ridiculous that is. But Johnny and I, the first time we worked together back in February, we made weight so easy it wasn't even funny. And he felt great. The weight came off. I think we ended up hitting like 168, 169 the day before. I mean, he just felt great. So, but what we did during that time is he was doing strength and conditioning for a while with his new coach. And I couldn't get his weight to kind of fluctuate the way I wanted it to. So we decided to pull strength and conditioning almost 5 weeks away from the fight. He still did his conditioning, of course, and cardio, but strength, lifting weights. Johnny's body responds really, really well to certain things. This time we felt very confident. We talked about it. We checked in with the UFC. I believe it was 176.8 on that Tuesday. This time Johnny and I agreed that, we can come in a little bit heavier because of how easy the weight came off. And also we thought that we can kind of continue to do strength training all the way up. So we did come in a little bit heavier than what we did last time. But everything was fine up until the day before weigh-ins. We were only 3 pounds over the day before weigh-ins. We woke up in the morning, we ate, we drank, we did what we normally do, push. Johnny felt great, energy was great. We took a little bit of a break, we ate, we drank, and then we went to push midday, and Johnny wanted to push, the coaches wanted to push, and I think it was definitely a little bit too much, and it started to tax on him, something that I have not seen from him, Remember, the first time we worked together, there was never an issue. This time, we hit a roadblock and we tried to push through it, which I think was a mistake. And I made the decision to hydrate him. I'm not a guy that's going to dehydrate my fighters. I'm not a guy that's going to risk them having to go to the hospital or needing a wheelchair to be brought in to make weight. I made the decision to hydrate him, give him fluid to make sure that I knew he was okay, safe, and everything was fine. And maybe that cost us a .25, maybe it didn't. I stand behind my decision because, like I said, I'm not going to risk their health. So when we had woke up the next morning to finish what we were doing, and then again we obviously missed by .25, I kind of had a feeling we were going to miss, but I was okay with it because of the decision that I chose to make.
Now, Johnny's wife touched on that issue in a tweet after the cut, and I want to get back to that in a moment. But staying on this for a second, Lou, when you say Johnny hit a wall, are you saying he stopped sweating, or just he started to struggle mentally or physically?
No, he didn't stop sweating. He certainly wasn't sweating as much. He didn't stop sweating. He just started to get really fatigued, really tired. And you got to remember, before Johnny and I worked together, his body completely shut down. His kidneys started to shut down, and he had to go to the hospital. So there's a lot of mental things that are playing there as well. And I felt like we pushed as much as I wanted to push, and the weight, kind of stayed still for a second, and I wasn't willing to do anything dramatic or drastic to get that last pound off. So my goal or my choice was to hydrate him, make sure he feels good, and he was hydrated and felt fine, and then we'll try to push again, the next day, and let's see where the cards fall, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And again, I don't remember exactly when it was, but a day or two afterwards, Johnny Hendricks' wife put out a tweet, and I'm paraphrasing, but she said she was grateful that Louis Giordano cared about more than just Johnny Hendricks making weight, about wheeling him into the ring, but that you cared about his health. Now, I can't imagine at the time when you decided to hydrate him, when it became apparent that he may have trouble making weight again. I can't imagine the discord, the arguments that may have been going on or whatever inside the camp, or the stress. Seeing that tweet afterwards from your client, your friend, your athlete's wife, did that make you feel good?
It meant the world. It actually took care of everything that I was going through. Obviously I wear my emotions on my sleeve. I care about my guys genuinely. And when I first met him back in November, I made a promise to his wife and to his 3 little girls that I would always take care of their father, protect their father, and do all I can to make sure that he's healthy and safe. I don't care if I ruin my career, as long as I protect and keep my word. That's what means most to me. Because when I first sat down with them, they told me horror stories about what other people in this industry did to him to get him to make weight. Now, I'm not going to sit here and talk about the specifics as to what was done, because those people know what they did. I know what they did, and I vowed to never do that to him, And when I saw her put that up there, it just meant the world to me. And I got a lot of positive feedback from people, because on one hand, again, I didn't run from it. I didn't make excuses for some of these other guys. I didn't blame Johnny, calling him lazy, saying that he likes to eat too much. I manned up to it. I take full responsibility. And Johnny and I had a great conversation, have many great conversations. We're staying at 70, and we're going to continue to make 70. We know what we need to do to tweak it, to never let that happen again. But after she wrote that, that's the only thing that mattered to me. I could care less what anybody had to say, any of my critics or 1 or 2 really, main critics that I have. I just laugh at them. I think they're jokes.
The scene you paint, the family caring about you, taking care of it, to me, in my mind, this might be weird, it makes me think of Jerry Maguire. He's got this special relationship with Rod Tidwell and his family and his wife, and she calls him on the phone when he's injured, and then he's fine, and he scored this huge touchdown, and he got this contract, and they're hugging at the end in the media scrum. And I think it's Troy Aikman in the movie. It's talking to his agent, and he's like, why don't we have a relationship like that? So that's kind of what I picture in my mind. Do other fighters see the relationship that you have, and that you cared for him and you made a decision for him, not for the result? And do they come to you and want to work with you because of it?
I've definitely, like I said, got a lot of positive feedback. Some of the people that I'm currently working with, Jose Shorty Torres, who's got a fight coming up for the interim belt, he put out a statement the very next day, thanking me for who I am and what I do, and how he would never trust anybody else with his weight. I had texted Andre Arlovsky, I think the night of the fight, asking him, hey, obviously everybody knew what happened. We missed weight. Johnny lost the fight and all those things. I had asked him, are you still going to work with me? And he got very mad at me. Are you kidding me? Why would you ask me that? Of course. So I take pride in the relationships that I have with my athletes. And I can guarantee you that nobody else who does what I do can say the same thing. And that's what's most important to me. And my athletes and my clients know that. So, again, it's one of those things that I pride myself on, and it just makes me feel good to hear from them like that, Now,
Lou, Andrei Arlovski has a fight coming up real soon. Are you going to be with him in Germany where it's taking place for the fight, or are you just kind of consulting remotely?
No, I'm leaving this Sunday. I actually got a flight at 5 a.m. going out to Albuquerque for a few weeks. And then I'll come home for a little bit, and then I'll go out to Germany with him.
To me, that's a really interesting and cool situation because Arlovski is a heavyweight, and a heavyweight who doesn't have to, quote-unquote, cut weight to make the 265-pound limit. Lou, what does he tell you the value of your coaching is for him? Because he's not, quote-unquote, cutting weight.
It's our relationship, It's the genuineness, and he knows that I genuinely care about him, and will do everything I can to make sure that he is as healthy as I possibly can make him. And he was very happy with. I'm not making this up. I'm not saying this. This is coming from him. That he was very happy with what I was able to do for the last fight, and is excited, with continuing to work together and the relationship that him and I had. I looked at him weeks after working together, and I said, listen, as long as we're working together, I will not work with another heavyweight. I'm not that guy, man. I'm not trying to build this business and just, rotate fighters. I want to build true, genuine relationships, and I think that's why the guys stay with me that I have, that continue to stay with me, and that's one of the things with Andre. He felt great. We're going to make some changes and some tweaks. He's going to look even better physically coming into this next fight, and I'm just really excited for it.
That's pretty interesting a thing for fighters to hear, I feel. Here's a fighter, Arlovski, who doesn't have to cut weight, but he's showing that, hey, you can care about what you eat just because of the way it may make you feel and help you perform. It's not always just about getting down to an arbitrary weight. So Arlovski is still investing in this because there's a value he realizes to just being healthy if you're a professional athlete.
Absolutely, because again, what I bring to the table, and you could listen to any of Johnny Hendricks' interviews of us working together. What I do is I don't put these guys on diets. When I had met Andre, he was already kind of following a protocol of something else, and had extensive, blood work done, and based off of all that, this was the best diet for him, and he wasn't happy. He wasn't feeling good. Okay, so just because a textbook tells you that this is what you need to do doesn't mean that you're actually going to like it and enjoy it. So what I try to do is teach these guys that you can eat certain foods, you can enjoy certain things, because I want to protect your longevity. You can't call it a lifestyle change if I'm making you eat things that you don't enjoy. You can't call it a lifestyle change if I'm making you work out or do things that you cannot continue to do for the rest of your life. That's torture. That's not a lifestyle change. It's an unrealistic thing. So I'm trying to teach them, how to be realistic in an unrealistic environment, if that makes sense.
Lou, where can fans find more information about you? Where can they follow you and all that?
You can go to my Instagram. It's Loutrition. Twitter is @Lou_Trition. Facebook's Loutrition. And I have a website, loutrition.net. I do customized meal plans for, the stay-at-home moms, the hardworking people, and then also the professional athletes. That's loutrition.net. I also own a supplement company. All my supplements are clean, guaranteed potency, NASF certified, which means that all my sports stuff is all, legit. And that's Nutrition, N-U-E, nutrition.com.
Well, thank you, Lou, for talking to us. Thank you so much for joining the podcast and shedding some light on the whole UFC 200 situation. Really, really fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you very much, brother. I really appreciate it. And same to you, man. Best of luck with everything that you're doing. You're unbelievable. Nothing but respect.
So that was a enlightening interview.
Sure it was. I feel like we could talk to him for like hours more just about health and weight management. And we should definitely have him on again because there's a lot of stuff with weight cutting going on that's changing with the rules and all that.
But we're weird, so like we could talk to him for an hour
Good.
or longer. People don't want to.
Well, it's cool because there's always something that's going to come up. Like this time, it was Johnny Hendricks, right? Well, there's going to be other people struggling with weight or situations. So, yeah, he's a great guy to talk to. I've gotten to talk to him a bit over the last year, and in a short period of time, he's had a lot of success with some high-level fighters. And I like his approach to it. And he's not the only one, but there's very few, and they're emerging now, of these weight cut experts that are really emphasizing, hey guys, I know that your whole life, especially if you're like a wrestler, you've been thinking, I've got to walk around as big as I can so that I can be the bigger person or not be that much smaller person. And they're changing it. I said, listen, you guys are performance athletes, right? Being big and bulky won't count for anything if your muscles will just, crap out on you in the fight and if you feel like garbage. I like that approach. They're people like Louis Giordano are encouraging their athletes to get healthier, and they're going to be lighter all year round. They're going to have to dehydrate themselves less, if at all, and I think they're going to perform better, and they're going to tax their body a lot less. I mean, people do real damage with this weight cutting, which is just basically like controlled death spiral via dehydration, right? Like, we're going to stop this at this point, but you're kind of killing yourself with it. It hurts your kidneys, and there was I feel so bad I can't remember the name, but just the other year there was a UFC fighter, a young guy in his 20s, I believe, who had a winning record, who retired because he went during a physical. Basically, a doctor revealed to him after some tests, like, hey, you've got like one working kidney left, and he is a wrestler. He'd been dehydrating himself to make weight since he was a child, and so he had the kidneys of like an unhealthy 80-year-old or something like that.
Man.
It does real damage. So I like this approach. I like talking to people like Louis Giordano because they're not all about just getting that person like a piece of meat into the ring and weight via any method. Let's be healthy all year round. I like that.
Well, the thinking outside the box is what's going to move the sport forward, and this weight cutting has become a huge issue, and I feel like it's finally being addressed in the right way.
Yeah.
Not only from people like Louis Giordano, who's coming on and changing the way that people are cutting weight or managing weight, as he likes to phrase it,
right.
But also the UFC and the athletic commissions are doing stuff about it. The earlier weigh-ins seem to be really popular and seem to be something that the fighters are really fond of.
Yeah. So
there's approaches coming from both sides to try and rectify this problem, and what he's doing with the weight cutting, as opposed to weight cutting, managing weight, just makes so much sense. And to think about it, he hasn't even been doing it that long,
right.
At least with fighters.
Right.
He's obviously been managing weight, like he told us, professional bodybuilders or whatever. That's just something I wasn't aware of. But with fighters, has it been a little over a year?
Yeah, probably.
Like 192? Or maybe not even. Like, isn't 192 was when he first reached out to Hendricks or something?
Yeah, Hendricks reached out to him, I believe. But before that, he had worked with Eddie Gordon. But yeah,
right.
It's been only about a year. So yeah, it hasn't been that long.
But he's making a big impact, and leading, even though Johnny Hendricks missed weight by like a quarter of a pound.
Right.
And that was very enlightening to hear him say that. We follow the MMA news cycle pretty closely, and I feel like I haven't heard the behind the scenes from either Hendricks or Lou about what happened that week.
Right.
So that was really enlightening to hear him shed some light on what happened, because everybody's like, a quarter of the pound, that's a scale not being calibrated correctly. Was it a mistake? Did you weigh in on the other scale and it said you were the one that they checked themselves on or whatever? That one, were you on point that one and you thought you were good and you came in? It's a quarter of a pound, and you almost never hear when they do weigh-ins at the UFC that they do a quarter of a pound. Usually they do half-pound intervals. So that was interesting, but it's just, it's incredibly fascinating to me.
It really is, and I love this approach. There's others. TJ Dillashaw's weight management coaches that he works with at Perfecting Athletes. They have a very similar approach. They've also worked with Chris Weidman. So I like that some high-level guys and girls are getting some good advice in that regard. I'm sure there's other very knowledgeable people out there as well. But yeah, we got to do something to just have stop people from dropping, 15% of their weight in water the day before they have to go out there and perform. That's nasty.
Well, where my mind was going before my thought process dropped off just then is that you saw pictures of Johnny Hendricks before UFC 200.
Look great.
He looked great.
Yeah, I mean, they entered the week, what, you said 176? And they had
That's
the
nothing.
That's nothing. He would show up, like, the reports would be like, he'd be like close to 20 pounds over on Tuesday when you get there. That's nothing. So they were managing it well.
Yeah. They put themselves in good position.
Right. It certainly seems that way.
But it's refreshing to hear that somebody would say, you know, I want to hydrate you for your health. I don't want to like
shocking
push you over the edge to make the weight.
Shouldn't be shocking, but it was shocking to me.
Yeah.
Guys, and including Johnny Hendricks in the past, have been virtually wheeled out there to weigh in. That's very atypical. It's a ruthless, winning is it most important type of world in sports generally. So to hear that, pretty interesting.
The other thing that he said that really stuck out to me was when you were talking about Arlovsky, and when you asked him about a heavyweight, bringing him on to cut weight, like, you know, they don't need weight management specialists, but it was interesting to hear him shed light on why Arlovsky wants to work with him, and it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
You know, you're an athlete, you have to put in the right fuel to train, to keep yourself energy. You know, it's like back because the Olympics is coming up, and think of this example, like Michael Phelps eats X amount of calories a day because he burned so many swimming. Like, he just needs to consume so much to keep his body fueled. And so that made sense. But the other thing was that he wouldn't work with another heavyweight.
That stood out as well. These are some really those things are remarkable, right? Hydrating someone when they're that close to weight, instead of saying, no, we got to make you have you make weight no matter what, and then committing to one person per weight division. That's amazing, because Louis Giordano's at the point where people are calling him to be clients. I wouldn't be surprised at all if other heavyweights want to work with him, if other welterweights want to work with him. And for him to make that kind of commitment, that is exceptional. That's not seen everywhere, even in that industry, in that position.
I joked about the Jerry Maguire thing before.
And then it's like, no, this is real.
And then he's like, I'm in this genuinely for relationships, and I won't work with somebody who fights in the same weight class as somebody that I'm working with. And it's like, oh, well, that's really taking it to another level.
It really is.
So fascinating stuff, incredible journey. And the big topic anytime some stuff with Hendricks comes up is he going to stay at 170?
Right.
And he said yes.
Yeah, he said, like, we're working together still. I didn't know if they were or not after this.
Yeah. Fair, right? I mean, that's a fair assumption or question to have.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, guys switch coaches all the time. And then B, no, we're staying at 170. So yeah, those are some big news items in the Johnny Hendricks welterweight title picture, or title contender picture.
And I think that also bears credence to the fact that he's not sitting here saying it was my decision and I'm owning it and taking responsibility and I was trying to make the right decision for the athlete. Mm-hmm. That there's actual weight to what he's saying because Hendricks is sticking by him.
Exactly. That does, you know, it at least speaks to the relationship they have. And, you know, I wasn't there. I don't know the ins and outs. It was good to get his perspective. But certainly, if that's the way it went down, it's good to see an athlete. Athletes can be fickle sometimes, with coaches especially. It's good to see an athlete stick with someone for the right reasons, or develop some trust beyond like superficial results, so to speak. So yeah, I hope it goes well for them. I hope it goes well for Johnny Hendricks. He's a great fighter, and when he's at his best, can still be at the top of the division. So yeah, I hope I've seen him fight when he had some trouble with weight cuts. He looked like death. I'm glad, if nothing else, it seems like he's living a more healthy life.
Well, I've seen firsthand, maybe not the best word to use here, but I've seen Hendricks trying to cut weight in the last in a Hail Mary attempt to make it. It was 171 in Dallas. He was fighting Robbie Lawler the first time, and it was for the vacant welterweight title, and he missed weight when he stepped on the scale. Now, this, of course, was when the weigh-ins were in the afternoon, and it was live, and if you missed weight, you had 2 hours to make weight. People are filing out of the venue where they had the weigh-ins, and he's in that sauna suit that Joe Giordano, or Lou talked about, trying to get off that last pound or whatever it was to make weight for this title fight. So, you know, I've seen that happen, but him coming in with 176 pounds seems like easy money, which means what he's doing is working, and it's working for him. And speaking of, like, he brought up the rubber suits, you know, to cut weight. We saw a fighter recently give another fighter that at weigh-ins. I don't remember which fighter it was or what event it was, but that stuck out recently. Yeah, no,
it's still very common hitting the sauna or the steam room after you haven't had water or food in a while, and having sweats, and then tucking your socks in, and then having a sweat, like plastics, what they call them, you know, on. Yeah, that's scary stuff, man.
Now, you've done it, and you've done a post on it. I've always wanted to put myself through it just to have a better understanding of it. I played team sports growing up, but I always wanted to put myself through it.
So did I, yeah. Well, I always didn't want to do it, and then I finally tried. Yeah, like a little baby cut. So I've never, I'm a fat boy at heart and in my head, and so even though I fight,
we all are.
Yeah, that's right. Even though I fight at an amateur level in MMA, I've never actually cut weight. Now I've gotten on nutrition plans and dropped weight from where I started at the beginning of a camp, but I never cut weight because I didn't want to do that. So I fought people that were sometimes bigger than me and all that, but I just didn't think it was worth it at low amateur level. I didn't think it would make that much of a difference, and I don't think it has. Long story short, I've never cut weight, not even for jiu-jitsu tournaments or anything like that. Last year, I wanted to get some insight into that process, and Joe Lauzon let me into his camp. I kind of talked with some different fighters. I remember chatting with Mike Brown, former featherweight world champ, and while he was cornering and doing Charles Rosa's weight cut, and I remember talking to Joe, and I did a little. I got Joe's plan about a month and a half before, like how he started water loading, drinking, how much water he was drinking, when he started eliminating salt and all that. I tried to do that. I failed, and it's funny because we think about restriction with weight cutting. The first thing that I failed at with this weight cut experience was drinking enough water before, like a month before, loading enough. They want to create this flushing effect in their body so that if they're really, really loaded up with water, when they eliminate sodium from their diet a week or so before and they start cutting back on water the week of, their body just through urination starts flushing it out and they lose a lot of water weight. I failed in getting enough water in, and then when we were out there, I couldn't stick to the week of diet that he was doing, the restriction in food, and Joe's not a big cutter, right? He talked about how much he usually drops. He's not a big cutter, and that was still very hard. So he dropped, you'd have to see the article that I did, but I don't remember exactly, but he dropped around under 15 pounds, but he's a lot smaller than me. I dropped 10 pounds in 24 hours, and I did that without even restricting completely water or food. And I felt not awesome. I went to bed after the first day of cutting, because you split into two, and the idea of most of these guys and girls is they don't drink water that night. And it's amazing, it's hard to sleep if you're even just a little thirsty. I'm this first world spoiled type of person. I don't realize that. So yeah, it was a crazy experience. Even little baby cut, just 10 pounds of water weight in 24 hours. I feel lightheaded. I don't feel good. I feel grumpy. These guys and girls have been doing it for a lot longer. It's pretty remarkable. It got at least through a tiny bit of experiencing in the little small percentage of what he does that I did, and then just observing was pretty remarkable.
And for those interested in Elias's amateur career, you need to check out this interview he did with Submission Radio about CM Punk. Google it. There's stories out there.
Well, always listen to Submission Radio. Those boys are great. The Aussies are awesome. But yeah, they've had both of us on, and one time they tried to get me the fight with CM Punk before CM Punk had a
there
fight.
were blog post stuff about it.
Yeah, people covered it. I like Phil Brooks. I met him once at Rufus Sport last year. It was his first week, I think, of training there. He was a real cool dude, so I have nothing against him. But you fight people if they give you a fight, So it was
if you're gonna throw money at me,
yeah, as long as unqualified people are getting signed to the UFC,
why not me?
I'll take that check. No, but I wish him the best. He's taking on a really tough fight. We're gonna be talking a lot more about that, I know, in coming weeks. And he's got some guts, and he's a hardworking dude from everything I hear, and he's a Chicagoan that lives really close to us. Yeah. So Phil Brooks, I know I just called you unqualified to fight in UFC. So, but I think he's a tough dude. He's a good guy, and I wish him the best. But yeah, no, they try to give me that fight. They try to get their 10% management points to give me that fight.
We'll have to do when we are the next time we're at an event and the Submission Radio guys are there. We'll have to.
Oh yeah, those guys are awesome.
We'll have to do a 0.5 episode or something.
yeah. No.
Maybe a merging
combo. We should do a merged logo or something. But yeah, no, Phil Brooks got a much harder fight than fighting me, by the way.
Yeah, Mickey Gall.
Mickey Gall's a real dude.
We'll be there for that fight.
Yeah, that's gonna be good in Cleveland. Mickey Gall's a guy that I think would be in the UFC in 4 or 5 fights anyway. He's a big welterweight, strong kid. It's gonna be crazy.
So that pretty much wraps up our show. Incredible guests.
Yeah.
I want to remind you one more time to look for an extra episode coming on Friday. Lex McMahon of Titan Fighting, UFC heavyweight Stefan Struve. We're going to be talking about their charity and what they're doing, their work with veterans. Really looking forward to talking to that. It's an incredibly important topic to the both of us, and we, I have veterans in my family, so it means a lot. But thank you everybody for tuning in and listening. Great stuff, Giordano, Joe. It was incredible. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, whichever kind of phone you have. I'm assuming everybody has an iPhone because that's what I have, and it seems like I don't know anybody who has an Android
recently, and I'm still figuring out how to use it. But
I love it. But anyways, make sure to subscribe. Also, the TuneIn app, you can listen to it on there. Thank you, everyone, so much. We'll look forward to seeing you Friday and then again next Monday.